Hey, what's up, everybody? Thank you for joining me once again on this platform, Boxcar Media. You know, it's a little awkward getting used to speaking into a camera and trying to flow naturally and be as authentic as I can, because I think the world is saturated right now with AI and scripting and all this polished rhetoric. But I want to establish a very real and authentic relationship with you. I'm As my videos progress, my speech pattern is going to be more casual, and I'll be able to get into this flow state, and we could really have a conversation, really meet on this platform and exchange ideas and dialogue, hopefully at some point in the future. But today, I want to talk a little bit about having a poverty mindset. You know, a lot of times, many of us, want more. And when I say more, I mean income. We want more money. When we talk about poverty, it's always in relation, for the most part, to money. And there's all kinds of different forms of poverty, right? That we'll get into. But for the most part, when you say poverty, most people's minds automatically gravitate towards money. And I remember the first time that poverty mindset got exposed in my life. At the time, I had an office job, and I was going to a church where the standard was wearing suits. And my office job, you had to dress business casual. And so I always had some slacks, some dress shoes, and a collared shirt. And on Sundays, I dress up in a nice suit with a tie, matching socks and belt, the whole 9 yards. And so I was really starting to feel a little wealthy. Not wealthy to the point where, I'm driving luxury cars and having just money to blow. Not that kind of wealth. I'm talking about the wealth that, from where I came from to just wearing a suit was something significant. And so as my job and my church community was the most spaces that I occupied at that time, I dressed appropriately. And so eventually I got to a point where I went on a missions trip to Cape Town, South Africa. And that was a beautiful, beautiful experience. And I'd love to share that with you one day on a video if you guys have any interest. But this was the first time that this poverty mindset was really exposed in my mind, okay? So me and the pastor, we're flying. We're flying over the Atlantic. And when we flew over there, we flew coach. It was a 24-hour flight. I think we flew out of San Francisco, had a layover in Atlanta, then went to New York, and then from New York went to I think Johannesburg, and then eventually to Cape Town, South Africa. And after our trip, we came back on first class. And we were sitting in first class, and the stewardess walks by, and she has these napkins rolled up. They were like warm, wet napkins with some tongs. And she comes by on this tray, and she goes, "Sir, would you like a napkin?" I had no idea what they were for, but they were for to wipe your face and face down and stuff like that, just to refreshen yourself. And I said, "No, I'm okay, thank you." So as we're getting settled, she comes by, she has her tray, and she's like, "Would you like some orange juice or something to drink?" And I was like, No, I'm okay. I'm okay." And the pastor looks at me and says, "All this stuff is free, bro." And so I flagged the waitress down. I was like, whoa, can you come back? And I didn't deny anything at that point, because in first class, it was complimentary. But God revealed something to me that day, that I was sitting in first class with a coach mentality. I was sitting in first class with a coach mentality. You see, I dressed the part. I was wearing suits and going to work as in business casual, and I did a lot of reading and was a little articulate and really was feeling myself. And I was like, man, God, I'm ready for some money. You broke every curse in my family, and the last one to go was poverty. And so I just knew beyond the shadow of a doubt that God was just going to flood me with finances. I never really bought into the whole prosperity gospel and none of that. I just felt like God had me on his radar, and he was just going to get a dump truck and just start pouring money into my lap. But that's not how it went. You see, because mindset is everything. And I had a poverty mindset. And I got frustrated when that windfall of money never came, because I had to learn how to navigate money, how to manage money, how to protect myself from what money can do to a person. You know what I mean? Money destroys a lot of people. Money can destroy a lot of people. And God loved me too much to allow me to destroy myself with something I wasn't ready for. I remember when one of my daughters, was shopping around for a car, and she had an opportunity to buy a Mustang. And as a new driver, I didn't like the idea. I told her, this is too much car for you. It's too fast. And she didn't like it. And she ended up getting something else. But I can imagine maybe that's how God felt. Like, I wanted money. I wanted resources. I wanted wealth. And God says, I want to give it to you, but you're just not ready. And that plane trip to South Africa exposed the mindset that I had. I was sitting in first class with a coach mentality, with a poverty mentality. You see, I wanted more, but I just wasn't ready. And on one occasion, I ended up running into some money. It wasn't a lot, but for me it was. And really, the amount of money is subjective, right? What's a lot to me can be a little to you. What's a little to me can be a lot to you. And so to me, this was a lot of money at one time that I had at my disposal. And man, let me tell you, it nearly destroyed me. Just that little bit of, just that glimpse into some wealth, I didn't know what to do with it, how to handle it. I let it control me, and I eventually got in some trouble. And I look back now, and that was just God's grace and mercy showing me that I wasn't ready for that kind of responsibility. Money is a huge responsibility, man. It's not just about flaunting your wealth with designer clothes and luxury cars and custom homes and going on vacations and posting this never-ending highlight reel of this fabulous life that you're living. Money can take a strange direction at times. It could turn you into something that you had no idea you had in you. And God loves you too much to allow money to corrupt and rot the very soul he suffered and died for. So he showed me within his grace that I wasn't ready for it. He let a little windfall of money come into my hands, and like I said, it nearly destroyed me. I just wasn't ready for it. So, and another indicator that money was nowhere in sight at the time was my friend group. You know, there's a saying that says, you are the sum total of the 5 people you hang around with. 5 broke people, you're going to be the 6th. 5 educated people, you're going to be the 6th, and so on and so on. And I remember when I first heard that quote, and I looked around my surroundings, and I seen the income levels of my peer group. And let's just say it wasn't impressive. We were from the trenches, man. We were too concerned with survival and doing other things than accumulating wealth or building a skill set that would accumulate wealth. But after I had left that friend group, And I'm still friends with a few of them today. It's not like if you don't make money, you can't be my friend. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I was expecting money, but I was keeping company of people that were just as broke or more broke than I was. And it just doesn't work out like that. One day I was watching Shark Tank. I used to love that show. I don't know if it's still on now, but I remember Kevin O'Leary, one of the sharks on Shark Tank, and he was explaining his philosophy on money. Now, this guy's a billionaire. And so, I don't take advice from fat dietitians, but I will take advice from somebody that has a proven track record. And Kevin O'Leary has proven that there's one thing he does know, and that's how to make money, how to accumulate wealth, how to manage cash. And so he brought this interesting perspective, and I'm going to share it with you. He said that when it comes to money, he looks at his money, every dollar, like a soldier, and he's the general. And he says when he sends his army out to war, he expects them to bring back some POWs, right? So he was talking about he looks to invest and get a fat return on that investment. And I looked at that viewpoint and I was fascinated by it because he had this, he had a military mindset when it came to his money. And I looked at the way I treated money. And if I applied that same mindset when it came to my money, my army, and I was the general, I was sending my army out to get slaughtered because none of them were coming back with POWs. They were KIA, if you know what I mean. So I realized how wasteful I was with money. Now you can budget to the very penny and still be broke. And that's an income issue. Or you could have wealth, you could have money and still be broke. And that's just a behavioral issue. A lot of people talk about having retail therapy and, buying things does feel good, but it's a temporary fix. It's a short-term dopamine hit, but it hurts you in the long run. I don't know about you, but I've experienced buyer's remorse. There's things that I want and I want and I want. I eventually get it, maybe pay a little too much, maybe paid a little out of budget for that particular thing. And before you know it, 2-3 days later, it's sitting on my desk. Or I start second guessing, maybe I should have waited to purchase that. Again, that general sending out his soldiers to get slaughtered. It's a powerful analogy. And if you take it serious, you could start building wealth, guaranteed. Later on in life, after I started evolving as a person and building my faith and going around different circles and entering rooms where the ceiling was higher. So later on in life, I got around a different people group and I started being in circles and rooms where higher standards were a little more normal. And you see, proximity is powerful because when you get to be up close and personal with these type of individuals that are high earners in the top 1%, right? And you get to see how they operate. You get to see how they behave. You get to see the kind of company they keep. You kind of get to see what kind of decisions they make in the heat of battle, right? You get to see their behaviors, their interactions with people, their vocabulary, all the little nuances that I was just picking up on because I'm very observant. And I'd be around somebody that had a little bit of wealth. And again, wealth is subjective. For me, a wealthy person is different than maybe someone who you consider wealthy. But when I started changing my friend group, my peer group, and began interacting with people that I considered were high earners, I paid close attention. I paid close attention to their daily habits, to their decisions. And I would ask them how they built their wealth. And I would try to tease out the exact moment that changed for them, that brought them out of poverty into wealth. And I was like, okay, that's where this guy got his break. And I can't recall one person that I could say that got his wealth easy. It was always a struggle. It was always obstacles and barriers that they had to overcome to accumulate their wealth. A lot of times they failed. They just refused to give up. But now they're enjoying the fruits of their labor. And here I am. I want it too. And the reasons why I wanted wealth changed over time. Because if we're honest with ourselves, when I was younger, I wanted wealth to show that I made it as a status symbol. Wow, look at him. I remember him when he was running the streets acting crazy. Now look. It was all vanity. It was all ego. And then when I started having children and building a family and having a wife, my motives for wanting wealth changed then. I wanted to provide a quality of life that my family can be proud of. I wanted to be able to provide to a point where my family didn't want for anything. And there were seasons when we enjoyed times of wealth, and there were seasons when we had to endure times of scarcity. I'm just keeping it real. And most of the time, it was because of my fault, my faults, my bad decisions, my poor money management, my poor spending habits that put us in those situations. Now, we were never homeless, never without food and the necessities, but I think we could have took more vacations. We could have had a little bit less pressure in the house if a little bit more resources of income were coming in. But now that I'm older, my whole view on wealth has changed. I've redefined what wealthy really means. Because when you're my age, all these material things become less important. And I know how much they mean to some people when you're 20, 30, even into your late 30s, early 40s. You still want to show the Joneses that, hey, I made it. Hey, I'm rubbing shoulders with high earners. I got access into circles that you may not have access to. And it's just about status. It's about ego. But once you get my age, my true definition of wealth is first and foremost my relationship with God. To have an open line with the King of Kings is more valuable than anything I've ever possessed or ever wanted. And that could be a topic for another video. But my faith is a big part of who I am. And anytime I share my heart with you, it's going to come out at some point. That's just what it is. But also my family, my wife and children, and now my grandchildren. Oh man, I'm a wealthy man. I'm a very, very wealthy man. I have 5 beautiful kids. I have 7 or 8 grandchildren. They're all healthy. They're all good. And they're developing and enjoying life. And it's a beautiful thing, man. It really is. And when I sit back and think about how blessed I am as a human being, as a man, I can't help but thank God about my wealth, how wealthy I really am. Another way I redefine wealth is my health. When you get my age, man, if you're healthy, you're able to move around with these young people at work and still interact and play with your grandchildren and run around, and you're not dragging some oxygen tank with you or have to go to dialysis or, are suffering with some physical impairment. Your health is worth more than gold at my age. You ask me right now, would you rather be at optimal health or have a Lamborghini? Man, I'm keeping my health. You can have that Ferrari. You could have that Lamborghini. I want to be healthy. I want to be able to enjoy walking the beach with my wife. I want to enjoy going out to the hills and watching the sun go down with my grandchildren. I remember one time, me and my daughter, man, we were just sitting on the beach. We lived on this coastal town years ago. And we seen this pod of orcas, man, way out in the ocean, but we could see their dorsal fins. And I remember just sitting there in the ocean breeze. The sun was going down. This pod of orcas were going by in our line of sight. And I was sitting there being able to share this moment with my daughter, one of my daughters, and it was beautiful. That's wealth. That's wealth, man. It's one of the most cherished memories I have. So my children, my health, my family, and last but not least, the way I redefine wealth at my age is peace. Peace. You know, young women, when you can bring peace into a man's life, you're more precious than gold. You see, because when we're out in the workforce, we're swimming with sharks. We're out there making decisions, working on deadlines, correcting people, getting corrected, working hard, breaking our bodies, building, doing all the things that men do. And when we come home, the last thing we want to do is come home to a chaotic, toxic environment. We want to come home and experience peace. And so, by these definitions of wealth, I am a wealthy man. And if you have your health, your children, a relationship with God, and peace, I dare to say you're a wealthy one too. I'll see you on the next one.
Thank you for joining us. We hope today's episode has sparked your curiosity and offered you new insights into the human experience. If you enjoyed the episode, please consider subscribing and sharing it with others who might find value in our content. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to leave a comment and a thumbs up. Until next time, keep exploring, reflecting, and finding meaning in your own unique journey. Safe travels, and we'll see you on the next episode.